control? And especially, how is it that we've seen childhood obesity rates skyrocket in recent years? So much so that now we're seeing children coming down with diseases that we used to only see in adults. So we used to call adult onset diabetes. We can no longer call it that because children are getting these types of disorders.
Now, one of the stories that we didn't hear when we saw this making headlines is that there were, shall we say, there were a bunch of attorneys right on the heels of these companies, and there was actually a negotiation going on before Clinton came along, or at least before you guys knew that Clinton came along to do the front man stuff.
Yeah, so in interest of full disclosure, I actually was part of a team of lawyers that has been negotiating with the lawyers from the soda industry for the past 5 months. We were told that we weren't allowed to talk about these negotiations in the press, and lo and behold, we found out when everyone else did that the Clinton Foundation had formed a deal behind our backs. So our lawyers basically got scooped by Bill Clinton.
Now the big problem here, the big scam, the big deal is that the one little problem is there's no enforcement. And this is not a new story. This is sort of like a continuum of bait and switch by companies making believe that they want to do something about poisoning their children.
Right. So I started getting closely following this issue several years ago when I realized there was this disconnect. Because on one hand, the food companies and soda companies like to say that they're part of the solution. This is a phrase that they love to toss around whenever they get accused of actually causing the problem. And so they like to put themselves out in front saying, well, we're on top of this, we've got it covered. And why they like to say that is because they don't like to have laws passed to tell them what to do. And what's happening is a grassroots effort all around this country to pass laws to get soda out of schools. People are starting to ask the question, what are we doing selling sugary beverages to kids in schools in a captive environment? Well, because of this grassroots effort, soda companies realized they had a problem on their hands. And the way they respond is with what they call self-regulation, which basically is a voluntary system which says industry gets to call the shots. And so now what we have is Bill Clinton joining hands with industry in this self-regulatory scheme. So this so-called agreement that was formed with the Clinton Foundation is basically a voluntary system. And it doesn't even make any sense if you think about it, right? What is the Clinton Foundation doing forming an agreement with the soda companies? They're not a party to these arrangements that are really between the schools and the soda companies.
Well, it would certainly be hard to imagine that Bill Clinton is now going to hit the road and go from school to school, making sure that enforcement, or at least there is a sort of a will of the agreement taking place. You are listening to Flashpoints on Pacifica Radio. We're speaking with Michelle Simon. Some people say it's hyperbole when I say we are poisoning our kids with the stuff that we subject them through these various food programs that to which this is a part. These sugar, soda, water companies sort of augment a horrible situation. How bad is it in its...
Well, it depends on obviously how you want to define poison. And there's no question that, every health official, health expert is in agreement that sodas are a large part of the public health problem in this country. And
a large part.
Oh, absolutely. And while, the food companies like to argue about how you can't single out any one thing, right? I mean, unlike smoking, which has a clear connection between cigarettes and lung cancer, it's a lot harder to pick out, say, for example, hamburgers, french fries, etc., and point the finger to obesity or heart disease. However, the exception to that rule is with soda. In fact, we have very good science to show a direct correlation between soda intake and obesity, which is why people have basically said we need to start there, and we certainly need to get them out of schools.
Now, the way that you were all treated by these big companies really is an indication of what they truly think about helping kids, or really changing the policies, or stepping back from selling this stuff, pushing this stuff inside the schools. I mean, talk a little bit about the little behind-the-scenes operation?
Sure. Well, my main message is that you cannot trust these corporations. I mean, it sounds so simple, and yet we seem to have a hard time getting people like the Clinton Foundation and the Heart Association, who formed this deal with Clinton, to understand that basic principle. And the evidence for why we can't trust these companies is plenty. So, like I mentioned before, almost every state in the country has tried to pass legislation. Has the soda companies who now had this epiphany, have they gotten out of the way to say, oh, well, okay, we'll let these laws pass because, we want to help kids? No. They've sent lobbyists to every state in the nation to
So
stop.
they fought it on every front.
Absolutely. In fact, these same lawyers who, while they were negotiating with the Clinton people, were fighting in the state legislature of Connecticut, where they were on year 5 and trying to get a bill passed there to get these sodas out of schools. Coke and Pepsi together spent $250,000 to lobby against legislation in that state. And on year 5, they kept lobbying even while these negotiations were going on. So when they say we're part of the solution and we want to help kids, it's a lot of nonsense.
And so there you are, you're trying to hold them accountable, you're meeting with them, you're getting ready to sign a deal, everything is looking good. How did you find out that you didn't have a deal, that Bill Clinton was going to be a front man for this stuff?
Well, after 4 or 5, I think it was, face-to-face meetings with members of industry, you might think a phone call would be in order to give us a heads up, maybe the day before, to say, look, sorry, we decided to go with Bill instead. We learned about it like everyone else did when the AP story hit the news wires Wednesday morning. And needless to say, my team of lawyers was rather upset to learn about it that way, and we still haven't heard from them.
You are listening to Flashpoints on Pacifica Radio. We're talking about what appeared to be a good deal that went down last week regarding big soda companies, bottling companies, to pull the sweet water from the schools. But again, there's no enforcement to the deal. They say they're going to enforce. This is really funny language. When you look at it as you write, it's something like 75% of the schools by 2008 or 9 school year will, and the rest will happen the next year. Down the road, when there's a different administration, when everybody's forgotten this, we won't do it anyway.
Right. So this is the only way, obviously, the Clinton people could even get this deal to happen. And these companies gave us the same song and dance. Well, we can't do it right away. It's so hard to change the machines. And, oh, my God, we need time. And so they, this is their stall tactic, right? They develop this long phase-in. And so, of course, everyone's going to forget about it in 3 years when the phase-in's supposed to happen. And there's no mechanism for oversight. And the whole thing's voluntary anyway. And the worst part about it is that the complete onus is on the schools to even get the changes to happen. So
and we know how overfunded the schools are and how they can put a few extra people on.
Right, exactly. And the schools are supposed to renegotiate these extremely complex contracts with these multinational corporations. So the whole thing is really a sham.
Okay, we have a couple of minutes, and so I spent a lot of years teaching, and I watched what happens to kids when they pour this stuff into their bodies, between the candy bars and the sodas they can get and all this kind of stuff. They just can't even sit still. So what do we know about correlation? What impact has all this garbage had? What can we say about that?
Right. Yeah, a lot of people say, well, why are we even worried about this? I mean, education's really the most important thing. And yet we know there's plenty of evidence to show a direct correlation between good nutrition and academic performance, and certainly behavior. There are schools that have gotten sodas out, junk food out, brought water in, brought whole foods in at lunchtime, and seen a remarkable shift in behavior. So much so that one school was able to basically turn its security guard into sort of a mentor for the kids. He didn't need to, be policing them anymore, but so he befriended them instead. So there's no question that changes in diet can make huge shifts in behavior and performance.
Well, we actually did. When I taught, we actually did a lot of teaching. It was supposed to be a special ed, class, and they would deliver the meals to the classroom, and it'd be sort of like potatoes with a grilled cheese sandwich, and you know what I mean, and fresh fruit, which was not fresh. And we had to cook for ourselves to even begin. Actually, we had to read the recipes too, so it was Actually, much hasn't changed. Not much has changed.
No, unfortunately, things have gotten worse,
What do
actually.
you mean they've gotten worse?
Well, what I mean is in terms of corporate takeover of the schools. I mean, these companies dangle these scoreboards and signing bonuses, the soda companies do, so that they take advantage. They're basically exploiting our public schools that are so desperate for money, and they're putting schools in this horrible situation of trading kids' health for some cash or some, band uniforms. And, the real problem, of course, comes down to that we don't properly fund education, and we certainly don't take what kids eat seriously enough. And so what we need to do is take a look at how did we get in this situation in the first place and not allow corporations to be exploiting schools.
All right, well, that's where we're going to pick it up next time. But if people want to find out more about the work that you're doing at the Center for Informed Food Choices or want to figure out ways to protect their kids, advice, 30 seconds?
Well, the best way right now is to visit my website, informedeating.org, and I've got resources out there, and I can put you in touch with other people around the country. There's a grassroots movement going on, and you can jump on board.
Well, I am so glad that you could come talk to us. Michelle Simon is an attorney. She is the founder and director of Center for Informed Food Services. You can reach her on email at michelleinformedeating.org, as she told you. Thank you very much. Coming up next, Nora Barris-Friedman is going to be talking with some people about a turn in the case of Mumia Abu-Jamal. You are listening to Flashpoints on Pacifica Radio. Stay tuned.
In Berkeley, I'm Nora Barros-Friedman. You're listening to Flashpoints on Pacifica Radio. We now take a look at the latest developments in the case of death row political prisoner and journalist Mumia Abu-Jamal. Joining us in the studio is Jeff Mackler, a coordinator with the Mobilization to Free Mumia Abu-Jamal. And on the phone, we are delighted to have Pam Africa, president of the International Concerned Friends and Family of Mumia Abu-Jamal in Philadelphia. Thanks, Jeff Mackler and Pam Africa, for being with us again on Flashpoints.
Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So, Jeff, briefly, can you update Mumia's case for our listeners?
Well, in a nutshell, on December 6th, the Court of Appeals, after years of waiting, decided to give us 2 certificates of appealability, thus extending the chances that we could win a new trial in Mumia's freedom, and we were thrilled with that. What we didn't see at the time, and what we underestimated, was the Court of Appeals also gave the state of Pennsylvania a certificate of appealability to challenge the ruling of Judge Yon in the Federal District Court. Yon was the one, if you may remember, who said that, who took Mumia off the immediate execution list of the state of Pennsylvania. He's still on death row, but they stayed the execution because